So Carl, tell us how your story began.
Well, it all started in about 1976, which is the reason I have grey hair. And I didn't get kicked out of school, but I left school at 3 months into grade 11. And I got a job with Pacific Metal Hose as a fabricator. Which seemed, it wasn't an apprenticeship at the time, but it seemed like a good thing to do. I seemed to be drawn towards that sort of manual sort of stuff. But following that, I got an apprenticeship at General Electric Company. I think that was in around about 1977 or 78, and started an apprenticeship in boilermaking.
One of the things that I noticed that you said in your script about sort of where you've been throughout your life, it didn't really look to me, or I didn't interpret it as you were overly academically minded as far as like high school education was concerned. Can you say a bit more about that?
Look, I think I represent quite a large population of high school students that don't see the relevance of the learning. There is, I think that's been proven many times over, that something like 60 to 70% of the school population is pretty well unengaged with the outcomes. But what I did notice once you entered vocational education was that it was directly relatable. So that was motivating for the first time probably in my educational life, that I could relate a skill to a job and then to pay, I guess, and status within the workplace and so on. So I engaged with the apprenticeship and all the courses after that very well, because I could use the skills. It wasn't general education, it wasn't geography or English or those sorts of things. It was about getting skills and getting essentially a career together.
Yeah, excellent.
So,
well, what's interesting from what I read here is that school wasn't really your thing.
no.
Picked up a trade, loved it, excelled at it. Funnily enough, went back and did more study.
Yep.
Just got a thirst for it.
Yep.
And then flipped that on its head. Then you became an educator yourself.
Yeah, and I re-entered with probably some kind of Florence Nightingale view of education, that I was going to be better at teaching than the teachers that taught me. But that didn't happen really. But what did happen was that I started to realise that I could, I realised that I could get into university and do a university degree and could deal with it reasonably well. Something I might have not even contemplated when I was leaving school. I just didn't have the grades, nor did I have the inclination to be researching or writing essays and so on and so forth. So I was much more of a practical learner, see it and do it type person. I don't think I'm alone. I think it's a big portion of our population lives like this. There are obviously other people that do engage with research and love that autonomy, but I needed something a bit more practical. But following that, I got some more and more confidence as I went on, and it didn't stop there. So the degree in education opened doors that I never thought was possible. For example, I got the job at Evans Deakin Engineering because I had a teaching degree, which seems really weird. But at the time, the employment of a HR manager in the engineering company was seen as something probably not to do. And the guy that employed me thought that teaching and education and HR kind of fitted together, so he wanted to put in some kind of HR functions there. And I took over apprenticeship and all the training requirements for that company. So it's funny how a career will unfold. You could never plan that. It's just something that happened at the time.
So having done the trades and then seeing that was a means that if you did further study, you could advance pay scale, working conditions, etc., etc. Was that the drive to then go on and do the higher study? Because I know university is much more theoretical application. What was the switch into doing the bachelor's? Was it purely just because you'd always had the dream to be an educator?
Well, more specifically, a TAFE teacher. I wanted to teach the trade.
Yeah.
And I've got to be brutally honest that it was about, you know, trying to move off the tools and into a management role of some kind.
Yep.
I did look around the workshops I worked with, and I saw a lot of guys in their 50s and 60s that were earning the same money as me, and that's the reality. Is that it's a unionised workforce, and so therefore if you wanted to earn more money in that environment, you had to go up the management ladder, and that required education. So I felt that, you know, going into teaching was an opportunity to get better wages and better conditions and so on. So, you know, it was pretty, looking back, it's probably a fairly selfish thing. You know, it was totally about me and my career and so on. So, but it did pay off in the end.
Well, I guess what it highlights from when you look at from where you started having left school and to where you are now, the theme that runs true, irrespective of whether you thought, oh, my vision is to become an educator and own a registered training organisation, you have always seen the value in some sort of learning, whether it's formal or informal.
Yep.
You've learnt that by formalising the learning that you've had in the workplace, and probably maybe in your personal life as well, that it does pay its dividends, whether it's that you get more money or you get a position that is more comfortable, as you've said, as you get into closer to retirement age, you're not on the tools.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably something that when you look at the market that we predominantly train, that's what they need to be thinking about, is you've got that long-term vision. And I know you said that it was a selfish reason why you might have done it, but it's also self-preservation.
It is. I learnt pretty well early in the piece that if you had more skills, kind of recognised skills or qualifications, that puts you at the top of the pile as opposed to people that didn't have qualifications. So that was a pretty clear message back 20 odd years ago. So hence the ongoing endeavour to keep educating. Again, probably looking back 25 years ago, I didn't really know, precisely that it was going to work. I just saw that people that got higher paid white jobs were educated, they had degrees, they had done the night school, they'd done all the hard yards that got them the next job. So I committed myself to that. And I didn't want to be boilermaking when I was 50. It's a tough trade. It's hot and it's smoky and it's hard work, and you can only do that for a short period of your working life. Probably the first 15 years is where you want to be. That's probably your most productive time of your life. Physically. So you had to start to move to more of a knowledge worker, somebody who is able to work. And it's surprisingly, like in 1990, which most people would seem, almost ridiculous now, is that I got the job at General Welding and Construction because I could use a computer, that was really on one of the top parts of the interview, was, oh wow, you can use the computer. So, which seems ridiculous now, but that was a reality 26 years ago, I guess, now. So, from there, it just kept going. So I was on a roll. And I think overall that looking back now and say, okay, well, Outsource Institute of Technology is my creation, and it's been a big love of mine for the last 10 to 15 years of building Outsource, but the career before that makes sense now, because we are an engineering training company. I did 20 odd years in engineering, metal fabrication and quality assurance management. But looking back now, it makes a lot more sense than it did when I was doing it. So I think if I probably say to anybody that's embarking, a young person in their late 20s, embarking on a career and wondering where they're going to go, it's you really just got to follow your heart and have some faith that it will work out in the long term, because it generally does. If you work hard, what is the great saying of Gary Player, the golfer? He said, "The harder you work, the luckier you get." So that's been a bit of a motto of mine. So yeah. So what's next for me and Outsource? I think what I try and do every year is to attend as many seminars and conferences as I can, which keeps my view of the landscape clear for the company, and also I like to send staff on these events as well, particularly the training and development specialists. I like them to attend because that gives them a more of a consulting knowledge for clients rather than just a sale process. So education is still a big part of the process, and of course I'm a believer because I own an educational company, but you know, you really should be keeping up with the times. You should be keeping an eye on what's happening next, and preparing yourself for those changes. So yeah, that's the future of Outsource and myself, I would think.
So no more formal education?
No, I think if I did formal education, I would, or some kind of formal education, I wouldn't mind doing economics, but I probably wouldn't like to do all the assessments and so on. I would just like to attend the lectures and and learn more about it, because I'm not necessarily motivated by qualifications anymore. It's more about knowledge of how to position Outsource more effectively and grow it into the company I think it can be. So qualification, the hunger for qualifications has diminished now, but I'm now 54, so it's a little bit different. I'm not looking for jobs. I'm trying to run a company, so it's a different mindset now. But certainly back in the early days, it definitely was the motivation, is to get more skills and consequently better pay.
Yeah.
Put simply.
Yeah. So what advice would you have for others that are considering education to develop themselves personally or professionally?
I think there's a very common thing that's said these days: go where your heart is, or lead with your passion. These sorts of things, they're great. They're wonderful motivators, but you've got to find out what that is. That's the hard part. So. I've done some courses which I didn't really like, but I finished them, and you move on. But there becomes a common chord. You actually discover what you do like, and then you can put more passion into that. So if you do a course and you don't get the $100,000 a year and the company car, it's not a waste of time. It's a case of, well, you may have studied something which is not quite so valuable for yourself, and of course valuable to your future's employers. So what's the market really want in an employee? Of course you need good attitude and you need motivation and hard work, but you also need to have the skill set to be employable. So I don't know. I don't know whether I've answered that question really totally clearly, but I think just get into it and make a decision. Do as much learning as you can from your colleagues as well as formally, and see where it leads you. Because eventually your clarity will come. Probably more likely, clarity comes with maturity and education. It's probably a good way to look at that. Formula. Definitely.
Well, that's what you'd said about your own experiences. You would not have thought, looking forward, that I'm going to do boiler making and I'm going to end up the director of
No.
a training company.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, RTOs didn't even exist when I was starting out, so it was all government. So hence, I think, early on I thought, I could be a TAFE teacher because I was pretty good at a trade. So that common core of education sort of attracted me. Plus the 10 weeks holiday a year, that was interesting as well. I could play a heck of a lot of golf in those 10 weeks. But yeah, so it was looking for better wages and better conditions for sure, but education has always sort of drawn me towards it.